You reach the end of the first week at the root, and the body knows it even if the mind doesn't. Something's shifted beneath the surface. Something has begun to take form where there was only unraveling before. Listen for a moment to the quiet inside of you. It's not the quiet of collapse. This is the quiet of reconstruction. It's the kind of quiet that follows impact. The kind that rises when the ground becomes real again. All week you've been learning how to return to yourself without the armor that once kept you upright. You've been learning how to feel without fleeing, how to stay without bracing, how to let your breath carry the weight that your mind used to hold alone. This is the root at work. It's subtle, it's steady, and it won't shout. It won't perform. It'll only keep pulling you back to the truth of your own body. You might not realize it yet, but your nervous system does. It felt the difference each time you paused instead of reacting. It felt the shift each time you softened where you once used to tighten. It felt your presence re-enter the places that you abandoned long ago. This is how foundations form, not through revelation, through repetition, through the simple act of staying. Now let your breath move a little deeper. Let your body settle a little heavier. Feel the weight of your existence in this moment. It's not a metaphor, it's an architecture of return. You began this week learning how to live without the intensity that once defined you. The ego called it stagnation. The body called it safety. And somewhere inside of you, a quieter truth began to surface. A truth that doesn't depend on collapse to feel alive. A truth that doesn't measure worth through survival. You met yourself in new ways this week. You met the parts that still expect danger. The parts that still equate control with safety. You met the parts that want to rush the work. You met the parts that tremble when things finally become quiet. Each of those encounters was a doorway, not a setback. A doorway into the next layer of capacity. The root doesn't ask you to fix anything. It asks you to notice, to stay, to feel the ground beneath every thought and every breath. You learned this week that awareness isn't a concept, it's a position. It's a place inside of you that watches without running. It's the part of you that can witness a trigger rising and not hand the entire system over to it. Awareness is the first structure that the root rebuilds. Without it, everything collapses into instinct. With it, everything becomes choice. Choice is the new language of this stage, not the dramatic choices that rearrange your life in a single moment, but the small ones, the quiet ones, the ones that happen in the seconds before your body reacts, the ones that take place in the space between impulse and action. The one that no one sees but change the direction of everything. You made those choices all week. You chose to pause, to breathe. You chose to stay in your body when your history told you to leave it. You chose to respond even when reaction felt easier. Those choices aren't subtle, they're structural. Every time you choose presence over protection, you rewired something ancient. Every time you chose truth over habit, you redirected your foundation. Every time you chose awareness over urgency, you placed another stone in the ground of who you're becoming. That's the core of the root, not strength or certainty, but choice. The choice to return to yourself again and again. The choice to return to what feels real instead of what feels familiar. The choice to trust your presence more than your patterns and to inhabit the moment instead of bracing for the next one. Awareness makes these choices possible. Awareness lets you see where the old story tries to take control. Awareness lets you hear the voice that rises from fear before it becomes behavior. Awareness gives you a split second where you can decide to do something different. That split second is your power. That split second is your reconstruction. That split second is the root taking shape inside of you. Let your breath deepen and your ribs expand, and let your body register this truth. You're no longer living automatically. You're living deliberately. Feel the weight of that and the steadiness of that. Feel the freedom in that. Because the moment awareness enters, the old survival timeline ends. And the moment choice enters, a new one begins. You're not being carried by your past anymore. You're choosing your present. And you're building a future your old self never had the capacity to imagine. Whisper this internally. I choose myself even in the smallest moments. Awareness is my anchor. I am rebuilding from here. Imagine that you walk into a large room that you've lived in your entire life, but it's always been dark. You learned to navigate it by memory. You learned where the obstacles were by bumping into them. You memorized the shapes of the shadows because you had no choice. Over time, the darkness became familiar. You stopped questioning it. You simply moved through it by instinct. And then one day, someone hands you a small lamp. It's not bright, it doesn't illuminate the whole room. Actually, it barely lights up the space around your feet. But it's enough for you to see one thing clearly. You notice that many of the objects that you once tripped over were not threats, they were just furniture. You notice that some of the walls you leaned against were actually doorways. You notice that the room is larger than you ever believed. The lamp is awareness. The room is your inner world. The obstacles were never as dangerous as they felt in the dark. Now here's the part that most people don't understand. When you take that lamp and begin to walk through the room, nothing about the room immediately changes. The furniture is still in the same place, the walls are still where they've always been. Your habits still want to guide you the way that they always have, but something fundamental has shifted. You can see. You can choose where to stop. You can decide which direction you want to move. The room didn't become safer. You became more capable inside of it. That's what the root stage teaches. Awareness doesn't erase difficulty. It gives you the ability to navigate without fear of the unknown. This week isn't about rearranging the room. It's about learning how to walk with the lamp in your hand. And the more you walk, the more familiar the space becomes. The more familiar the space becomes, the more intentional your steps become. And one day, the lamp feels less like a tool and more like part of you. That's how choice is born, not through a dramatic shift, but through the slow illumination of what was always there. And when you understand this, you realize something important. Your power never came from controlling the room. It came from learning to see inside of it.